October was a really good month. It's time for another wrapped episode where I talk about all the movies that I watched, the books that I read, the TV shows I saw, life updates, things I bought throughout the month, all that fun stuff. It's basically just a life update for the past month of my life. Life update for the last month of my life. That sounds great, Nathan. The fun thing about this episode is we have more than usual to talk about. My birthday was this last month. We also had Halloween. I also went to my first concert ever and a bunch of other fun stuff. And so let's go ahead and get started with the episode. So I started the month off watching a few Orson Welles movies throughout the first week or so, and I'm not going to talk about any of them here because all my thoughts are in my Orson Welles complete filmography ranked video, and so just check that video out if you want to hear my thoughts. Every year on the channel, as in this is the second year I did it, I like to do what I call HALEoween, which is just a play on words with my last name and Halloween. It's basically my version of telling you guys what Halloween movies I watched. I checked out Venom 2 this month, and honestly, the 90s cartoon is much better. I mean, who couldn't love this?
Aunt May, it's me, Peter.
Oh, I hate spiders.
Can't you hear me?
I know how to get rid of you.
No!
As a kid, this movie freaked me out. Watching it as an adult was a fun time, though the pacing seemed way slower for some reason, and it's not even that long. I then watched Muppets Haunted Mansion, and I really wish they would bring Steve Whitmire back as Kermit the Frog. Also, I did love the Haunted Mansion setting though. I rewatched Halloween Town 1 and 2, and boy was that a nostalgic trip. Honestly, I think I can say with confidence that Halloween Town 1 is my favorite Disney Channel movie. I know you guys have just been dying to know. I try to watch a James Stewart movie every month, and this month I chose to watch Bell, Book and Candle because it's the closest Halloween themed movie that James Stewart is in. It switches at Christmas time, so could you categorize this in the same genre as Nightmare Before Christmas, where you got a little bit of Halloween and Christmas vibes going on? The scene that stood out to me most of this movie was the spellcasting scene, specifically the one that she casts on James Stewart's character. I also just liked the witch lore in this movie, and plus it was cool seeing James Stewart and Kim Novak in a movie together that's not Vertigo. Regardless of it taking place at Christmas time though, it was still a fun October watch. I then watched Secret Agent, an Alfred Hitchcock movie that's all about espionage, but don't get too excited, it's not too thrilling. I did like seeing them visit a chocolate factory because I'm secretly Willy Wonka in real life. It also had a very courteous runtime, which it gets points for. There was a sudden death at the end of the movie that just came out of nowhere that I thought was very unjustified. It didn't make sense to me why they included it. I then rewatched Monster House, and I think at this point I can claim that this movie is just perfect to me. Here's the thing, I grew up with Monster House, and so as a kid I saw it in theaters. Every time I rewatch it, it's just the perfect movie to get me into the Halloween spirit. It's these kids who just want to go trick-or-treating, they just want to save their neighborhood. Plus I feel like Monster House was a modern day Goonies for the time that it was released, where it's these kids who go on some sort of adventure, epic journey, they like cross the street. But you guys know what I mean. Like, these are the kinds of things that I lived for as a kid. I loved going on my trampoline as a kid and playing Star Wars or Harry Potter, or in this case, Monster House. I love Monster House. That's what I'm trying to say. I then rewatched Rebecca. This is the third time I've seen this in my life. First two times I wasn't very fond of it. I still don't love it, I would say, but I will say that this third watch was my favorite of all watches I've had. It's just a very haunting movie in the most subtle of ways, but at the same time it feels very grand too with the set design. Danvers is insane, and I love the performance by Judith Anderson. Strangely enough, there's a character in this movie that dies on October 12th, and I watched this movie on October 12th, so it lined up perfectly. I then did my annual rewatch of Nightmare Before Christmas. Yeah, I still love the movie. Pet Sematary is a catastrophe. The Strangers is realistic horror, but also unrealistic in how fast and quietly these strangers can move around. I didn't like this movie that much. It's one of those movies that I thought I liked after finishing it, but the more I thought about it, I'm just like, yeah, no, I'm never gonna watch that again. Dead of Night is one of the highlights of this month. It was definitely one of my favorite watches of the entire month. It's an anthology film, and so you get several short stories, but each one has some sort of spooky element hidden within it. In some cases, it reminded me of the Twilight Zone, but it was made before the Twilight Zone, so I don't know if the Twilight Zone took inspiration from this movie or what. The whole movie to me was a very like 7, 8 out of 10 type movie. I was like, this is just a fun watch. But the ending scene, the last 5 minutes, boosted it up to a 9 out of 10. I love this movie. I really want to own it in the collection so I can rewatch it in future years. And if there's one movie that you take from this video that you should watch in future Octobers, please watch Dead of Night. If you want to hear my thoughts on each anthology story, check out my Letterboxd review for this movie. I then rewatched The Others. This was Nick's first time seeing it. He really enjoyed it. My roommate also really enjoyed it. It's just a fun watch, and if you haven't seen it, Please check it out. I then saw Dune in theaters, in IMAX, I should say, and that was such an amazing experience. I loved it so much. It's one of those movies that just belongs on that tier of this movie doesn't feel like a movie. You know what I mean? It's an epic in every sense of the meaning of the word. It's also an incredible adaptation of the book. As I was reading the book, I kept thinking to myself, how could someone adapt this onto the big screen and make an actual movie out of this? And Denis Villeneuve does amazing at it. The score by Hans Zimmer is something that I will always remember about this movie, especially the one chant that cues in every single time something really cool is about to go down. You know what I mean? I'm sorry. I might check this out again in November. My birthday was October 24th and I rewatched Psycho. You guys are probably thinking I'm insane for watching this movie as many times as I do. I saw it earlier this year in theaters for Mother's Day. The reason I rewatched it this time is because, well, I mean, it's one of my favorite movies of all time. What a great birthday watch, right? But also my family, my cousins specifically, they hadn't seen it, and so we thought that we would all watch it together. They liked it. I, of course, loved it. Being high off of Psycho, I wanted to check out the documentary 7852, which talks about the filming specifically of the shower sequence from Psycho. The documentary is just decent. I can't really pinpoint what my complaints were with it, but I just didn't like it as much as I thought I would. The Fog is a John Carpenter movie starring both Janet Leigh and Jamie Lee Curtis, mother and daughter. I thought it would be interesting to see a movie with them both working together. So I checked it out and it was just a fun time. I mean, Fog within itself, it's such a fun horror character in any horror movie you're watching or in any movie you're watching in general. It just really is good at setting the tone and the feel of what the movie is trying to accomplish. Having a movie all about Fog, I can't say more than it was just a really fun time. If you don't take Dead of Night as my #1 recommended movie for this month, take my next pick, which is Duel. Duel is the first movie that Steven Spielberg ever directed, and it's a thriller about road rage, basically. These two cars are at it on the road. This huge semi-truck specifically has it in for this guy, this innocent guy who's just trying to get to a business meeting. And the whole movie you're wondering, why is he going after him? What are the motives for this? The way it ends and everything that leads up to the ending was just so enjoyable. It was edge of your seat film content. A little cheesy maybe at times, but the things I liked about it definitely outweighed the things I disliked about it. Nick, my roommate, and I then watched The Blob. We're starting this little weekly thing where every Wednesday night we watch a movie. On one Wednesday it was The Others, then we watched The Blob, and the next movie I'll talk about. But anyways, this was just a fun Criterion movie to watch during the month of October. It's really silly. It's a movie from the 50s called The Blob. I mean, what can you expect? We then watched Sinister, and it was very disturbing. I never want to see it again. The Descent, on the other hand, was very enjoyable to me. Just a great horror movie, a great thriller, feels very claustrophobic, and I think the creatures in this movie are very well designed. Great jump scares too. Young Frankenstein, unfortunately, was a big letdown for me. This movie has been on my watch list for I don't even know how many years. I've known about it since I was a little kid. The cover has always intrigued me. By the time I finally sat down and watched it for October, I just did not like it. I'm coming to realize that I just don't think Mel Brooks' humor is my kind of sense of humor. I mean, sure, there's the occasional laugh here and there, but it's just not very funny to me. Fathom Events was showing both The Invisible Man and The Wolf Man in movie theaters on October 30th, and so I checked out that double feature. I'd seen both movies before, but it had been it had been 4 years since I had seen them, and so it was really fun rewatching them. I'm not as big of a fan of The Invisible Man as some people are. Una O'Connor, who plays Jenny Hall in this movie, she's like the innkeeper's wife. Really annoying. I don't know how she could be even more annoying than she already is. Just honestly takes me out of the movie a little bit with how annoying she is. But Claude Rains is really fun as the Invisible Man. And then The Wolf Man, that's actually my favorite Universal monster movie, I would say. I just really like the foggy nights. There it is again with the fog. And I also just like the setting. I think wolves are really cool. I've always had a fascination with werewolves. My only nitpick with this movie is I just wish we saw more of the Wolf Man. In fact, I don't think he transforms until about 40 minutes into the movie, so I just wish we had more. Then that night, I checked out The Incredible Shrinking Man, which was a blast to watch. It's just super fun. He fights a house cat and a tarantula. I mean, these are the kind of movies I want from the 50s. The Old Dark House was kind of disappointing. I liked seeing Charles Lawton and Gloria Stewart, the one who plays older Rose in Titanic. She's in this movie too, which is cool. The movie itself was just kind of disappointing. I wish it was just creepier. And finally, on October night itself, I watched Nightmare Alley, which was a great segue from Halloween to Noirvember, which I definitely want to participate in on my channel this upcoming November. The reason I feel like it was a good segue is because it had some creepy elements in the sense that, you know, there's a carnival setting, scheming and betrayal, etc., etc. But then also it's just screaming noir with the lighting, the camera angles, the performances. It was just a great watch. I can't really say much more than that. Okay, next up, let's talk about TV shows I watched. I finally checked out Stranger Things Season 3, only 2 years late, am I right? Stranger Things to me is that TV show that I don't think I'll ever consider it like one of my favorite TV shows of all time, but every time I watch it, I can never deny I'm having a fun time with this. It's kind of like a comfort show. Like when I hear the theme music of Stranger Things start playing, I get all giddy inside. And so I definitely have a connection to it, but it's not a connection where it's like, yeah, this was an all-time favorite of mine. The fact that I saw season 3 2 years after its release date says enough. And then as far as books read, the only one I read was Dune, and I really enjoyed it. I gave it a 9 out of 10 or 4.5 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. And if you want to hear my review on it, just check out my Goodreads account. But basically some summed up thoughts. I really just think it's impressive how Frank Herbert is able to establish such a big, complex world with new characters, new politics, new ideas, new storylines. It's its own thing, and it was really cool to get lost in this world of Dune. Overall, I am not complaining. I did enjoy it. And it affected my movie viewing too, I would say. I think I liked the movie more because I read the book. Next up, I want to show some quick movie hauls. This first one is from KINO LORBER's Rocktober sale, I think it was called. I got Elias Nick Beale, Les Vampires, Easy Living, and Faust. I haven't seen any of these movies, but I do really want to see Elias Nick Beale for Noirvember. The haul that all of you guys have been waiting for, the Criterion Flash sale, happened in October. I always like participating in these flash sales specifically because it adds on points to my Criterion account so that I can get the $50 gift card someday. I've seen 3 of the 4 of these purchases. As always, I'll go in order of the spine number. Oddly enough, the first one I'm going to show is the one I haven't seen. That is the Manchurian Candidate. I'm really excited to see this because this year itself, I've become a big fan of Frank Sinatra as an actor, plus it has Janet Leigh, and I think it's considered neo-noir, and so I might check it out in November. Then we've got Phoenix, which oddly enough is a movie that was recommended by my dad of all people, and this was just a really haunting story about World War II. I just think it was portrayed so well. Then we've got Chimes at Midnight, which is a movie that I watched in preparation for my Orson Welles video, and I'm not a big fan of Shakespeare, but this movie was actually really well done. I liked the characters, I liked the direction the story went in, and I loved the ending especially. I love when a movie can really tug at my heartstrings, and the ending to this movie, it did that. So if you're kind of on the fence about Shakespeare, maybe this one will be more enjoyable to you, because at least it was for me. And then finally, from the flash sale, I got The Incredible Shrinking Man, which I already shared my thoughts on, but I bought it, watched it, enjoyed it, and I'm glad for it to be in the collection. The next few things I'll show are just a random haul. So I got Man's Search for Meaning because it's one of my favorite books of all time, and I wanted this edition specifically because I love that cover. So if you haven't read this book, definitely read it. I picked up the Pop Arts edition of Frankenstein, and I wanted to read it in October, but I just didn't have the time that I hoped I would. I still want to read it someday, but for now, I like the cover. And then there's a leader of my church. They just released a biography about him, M. Russell Ballard. It's called Anxiously Engaged, and I really look up to him, and so I'm excited to read this biography. And finally, one of my favorite movies of the year was released on Blu-ray. That is Lamb of God. This is a concert film, so think of Hamilton, how it's like a filmed production of the Broadway play. Lamb of God is sort of similar in the sense that it's just a film production, but it's not an actual production. It's just people singing in a studio about the life and death of Jesus Christ. If you're into this kind of thing, then you should definitely check it out because it is a very powerful message and very powerful story. Finally, I mentioned earlier it was my birthday. I want to show off some of my birthday haul, what I got for my birthday. So first off, this shirt I'm wearing was given to me by my sister. Thank you, Lindsay. I then got 2 records, 2 vinyls, if you will. One of them is Michael Jackson Thriller, which I feel like is a must-own for any vinyl collector, and it was amazing listening to Thriller on my record player. The other one was the Polar Express, which is an ironic gift to get in October, but I'm excited to listen to it in December because, and also even in November. I'm one of the weird guys who starts listening to Christmas music in November. Not only is the Polar Express score on this vinyl, but there's also songs from Frank Sinatra, Doris Day, Perry Como, and so I figured it's a win-win. There's something about Christmas music on vinyl that really hits home for me. And then I also got To Catch a Thief, the Paramount Presents edition, and TCM's Fright Favorites book. And then finally, Target had a buy one, get one free sale, and I got quite a few things. One of the things is still in the mail because it's not out yet, but it's like a book on the essential directors, and it's written by TCM. I'm really getting into TCM books. I want to read them, and I want to start studying movies based on what they recommend. But the first one actually is a TCM book. This is called This Was Hollywood, and from what I understand, this is about old timers in the Hollywood scene that aren't as well known as the big timers like James Stewart, Cary Grant, etc., etc. And so I'm excited and intrigued to read about what I can discover in this book. And then 50 must-see sci-fi movies from TCM. I'm really excited to check this one out. One of my favorite directors of all time is Frank Capra. I bought the autobiography of Frank Capra. It is called The Name Above the Title. It's a pretty thick read too, and I don't know when I'll start reading this. I do know that I want to try to attempt to watch all his filmography eventually, and so maybe while I'm watching his movies, that's when I'll start reading the book. And finally, I got The Big Clock, which is a Arrow Academy release. I did the reverse cover. This is normally what it looks like. And then I got the Bells of St. Mary's, which I've wanted since last Christmas, but I finally purchased during the sale. Other updates, Halloween happened. I was an 80s rocker dude. I mean, I did a murder mystery with my friends, and in that murder mystery, I played a math teacher from the 80s, and so I got a mullet wig and everything. It was pretty nuts. I also went to the library at one point because they were selling a bunch of things, and here's my haul from that trip. And then I mentioned at the beginning of the video that I went to my first concert. It was Bleachers. They're my favorite band. If you haven't heard of them, please listen to them because they are an amazing band. That's all I've got for you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.